Okay, so now let's just click on this to test the agent in the simulator. Let's just start by saying hello. So it just says, hello, how can I help you, right? And then I'm going to say, what is my balance? It says you haven't added any money. Please begin by adding a quarter. Okay, now if I say add a quarter, see, it did two things. If you notice, the first thing it did is that it actually responded with, okay, I added a quarter, and then also see that it says you have entered state 25. And the reason for that is because in the start state, if you were to go to add a quarter, you will notice that the intent already has a response coming back, which is, okay, I added a quarter, and then it does a transition to a new page, that is a new state. And if you notice in the new state called state 25, it has something called an entry dialog, which actually says that you have entered state 25. So that is why the response that you see here has two phrases, okay, I added a quarter, and it also says you have entered state 25. So with just what you have seen till now, you should be able to understand a few things. The first is that the states that we see here, or rather the pages that we see here, the pages that we see here represent states in your state diagram, right? That's the first thing that you understand. The other thing that you must notice is that when you are in this state, the user is able to say a certain set of phrases, and the bot is programmed to behave in a certain way. But I hope that you also noticed one more thing. So if I were to click on the default welcome intent, you can see that the user could say any number of welcome phrases like hi and hello and all that. And you can see that the fulfillment here says that, how can I help you, how can I assist, and all that. But notice that this is empty, right? So what happened here is that the user types a message, right? And the agent comes back with a response. So we know that this intent was mapped, but because it did not transition to a new page, that is a new state, it's still going to be active for the other phrases which you have defined in this set of intent routes. So I hope that you are clear about that, because that part is, you need to understand that before you can move on to the the future videos. Because here's the thing, there is a lot of things going on here, really. I would say that even though this part is very simple, it's still actually doing a lot of things. It is simultaneously trying to understand which set of intents are actually candidates to fire at a given point in the conversation. Now, in my, if you notice in my the tips for learning Dialogflow, the article that I pointed out before, one of the first things that I will say there is you should understand how Dialogflow ES works. And in ES, there is this concept that I defined called candidate intents. Now, I came up with the term candidate intents. I don't know whether Google calls it exactly the same thing, but the concept is quite similar. It is that at any given point in the conversation, not all intents that you have defined can fire. There are only a subset of all the intents that you have already created which are eligible to fire at that point in the conversation. And that's decided by a set of factors. In Dialogflow ES, it's based on the context which is active at that point. In the case of Dialogflow CX, it is based on the actual state, which is in fact represented by a page in your CX agent, right? So the reason I'm saying all this is because you have to understand that as your user types something, what response you get actually depends on which page is currently active, that is, which state is currently active. Okay, we will be looking at this in quite a lot more detail later on when we talk about scope and stuff. But for now, this is an important thing to understand. And that is also why when you clicked on, when the user said add a quarter, it not only came back with the fulfillment response saying, okay, I added a quarter, but it actually, it affected that state transition. And we know that it affected that state transition because it also came with it also provided the response, which is you have entered state 25. So you saw that it did all of those things when the user said add a quarter into the start state. So all these things you need to recognize as we are moving forward to the next video.